Okay, thank you very much. This time we would like to make it really a more panel kind of stuff, not really presenting too much. Of course, the magnificent ladies have prepared some short statements, but it will not be the core of this session. It will be rather a discussion. Nevertheless, we will start with three short statements, as I said, and I would like to ask Sheena to start, please.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm just going to speak for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to talk about engagement. And I'm sure lots of you think, well, we know all about engagement. It's something that we all talk about. And of course, we are all engaging the people that work for us, and we're all engaged. But actually, I want to talk about some of the things that really, really make a difference. And I'm bringing my experience both as Chief People Officer at Alexander Mann, but also previously with Vodafone, Coca-Cola, Mars, and a company in the UK called John Lewis, which is very, very well known for its kind of engagement of its employees, where I've spent all of my career. So when I talk about engagement, I'm talking about something that isn't just we do a survey once a year and then we have some actions that we probably file away in a drawer somewhere. I'm talking about thinking about the things that really, really make a difference. So what are those things and why do they matter? Well, why do they matter? They don't just matter because we like to have a great experience at work, but they matter actually because they make a difference to financial results. There's lots and lots of research that shows that companies who are in the top quartile of engagement have better financial results. Double the profits, 2.5 times revenue growth, a 19% increase in productivity, and 40% less turnover. And of course, that kind of attrition challenge is something that I know has been talked about earlier today. So it really matters for commercial reasons. But what are some of the things that in my experience, really make a difference? I forgot to pick up the clicker. Click forward, thank you. So I just have one slide to talk about. And actually, there's lots of research. We work with an organization called Engage for Success that works both in the UK but also globally. And the factors that they have identified that really transform the experience of people at work are these. The first one is about making sure there is a real sense of strategic narrative in the organization. So what does that mean? That means a sense of where we've come from and where we're going to. And everybody in the organization being able to articulate that. And in the organizations I've worked in, we've done that in lots of different ways. At Vodafone, we had what was called the big picture conversation, where we had a visual representation of how the organization had grown from nothing behind a curry shop in Newbury, which is in Berkshire, near where I live, to the global organization it is now. And actually, what was that journey? In AMS, where I work now, we ran a big conference earlier in the year, looking back at the 19 years of history and how we've now grown to a company of more than 3,000, but have aspirations to be, an enormous organization with a sort of 100 million in terms of EBITDA by 2020, and getting everybody in the organization to understand that. It's really, really important, whatever job they do. The second element that's incredibly important is about actually having engaging managers. So having managers who treat people in the way that they themselves want to be treated. Managers who are able and competent to have good dialogues with their teams, to connect on a personal level, but incredibly importantly, to be truly authentic. We don't want people coming to work thinking that they need to put on the corporate cloak of I'm a manager, so I need to behave in a way. We want people coming to work to being the very best of the person they can be, bring the best of them outside of work into work. And this is a huge focus for me and my team currently, but also in all the organizations I've worked in. In Vodafone, we ran a really deep leadership program, getting people to think about, managers think about their purpose and how do they really engage people in that. Another element that's important is about employee voice. And I don't just mean asking an annual survey. I mean, how do we genuinely give people who are doing the jobs in the organization an opportunity to kind of speak up and be listened to and be responded to? So whether that's about creating focus groups, listening groups, whether it's about having double feedback loops where you ask people for information and then you feed back to them on what you're doing about it, whether it's simple initiatives like you said, we did, it's really important that people feel that someone is listening to them. Ultimately, it's the people who are doing the jobs that really know what's wrong and how to fix it. It's not those of us that sit at the tops of organizations. And finally, the dimension that I think is also absolutely critical, and actually the others fall down without this, is about integrity. There needs to be a match between the values on the wall and the behavior each and every day in the organization. And this is something that I know in Alexander Mann we spend a long time focused on. We are a very values-driven company. It's about authenticity, it's about being brave, it's about being distinctive, and it's about being passionate. But it's not just about writing them on the wall, having nice posters. It's actually about making sure we recognize people when they are demonstrating those behaviors, and each and every one of our leaders living out those behaviors on a daily basis. So many of you will think, well, I know these things, and I could do them. But actually, let's think about the size of the prize. I mentioned some of the commercials earlier, but actually, Hay have done some research which shows that actually 94% of the world's most admired companies feel that their efforts in really driving engagement have given them competitive advantage, and I think that's really compelling. But even more compelling for me is to think about yourself at work. Wouldn't you want to be engaged? Wouldn't you want your people to be engaged? Because actually, we only have one life, and to have a happy and enjoyable time at work will make us happier outside of work. And for me, that's really what it's all about. Thank you.
Ilona, thank you.
Thank you very much. I will take the clicker. I love this conference because I feel like no matter which direction we go, the dots are all connecting back again. So I'm going to talk about the way that we're transforming from performance management to performance development at GE. And I think we've really sort of teed up that question a couple of times along the way. One of the questions was, how far can we go? And that's one of the things as a company we're trying to answer with this change. Our leadership philosophy is we all rise, and I think we can all agree that an environment where we accept that as each person gets better, the whole company can get better, and there's room for all of us to grow in whatever way we want to grow is, I think, an appealing one. We've also heard a lot about the change in the generation and the change in the way people are grown and developed, and the way feedback is given and the way technology is used to support that. So that's sort of the direction that I'd like to share with you. We heard from one of the sort of ultimate startup environments this morning, and one of the things we're aspiring to at GE is to behave a lot more like that, which is a fascinating thing for a 300,000 person company to say, we want to behave like a lean startup. We have a new change management methodology learned from startups called FastWorks. And what I'm about to show you is actually work in progress. I don't usually like to talk about things that aren't finished best practices. This is absolutely work in progress. And a lot of you are working with agile methodology. As part of FastWorks, we're actually testing the prototypes of this approach and this system. Last year, we tested on 5,500 employees. This year, we're broadening out to another couple of 10,000, and our IT center in Krakow will actually be beginning to be one of the pilots starting next month. So absolute work in progress on the culture change. What we see is that the business context, of course, all change is driven by business context. Our business context has, of course, changed massively, and it exponentially changes continuously. So the speed of change, the geographically, culturally, technologically diversified environment has really driven change. A couple of people mentioned earlier that as consumers, we're incredibly empowered, and as employees, well, gosh, are we even close to that empowered? So that's, again, the impetus for change for us. And people's expectations of what work means and what they can get out of the work environment and how they can develop. So this is the sort of context, research, and input that's informed this change. And I've got one more slide on what the change actually is. What I would say is that if you squint and look at it in one way, you would say, well, that's not so different. They kind of changed some names, and they're going to try to give the feedback faster. But if you squint and look at it in another way, and I think that's the more challenging way to look. It's a fundamental change in empowerment, as Sheena talked about, in the leader as a coach and no longer as a teller. And really, as one of my colleagues described, you're switching performance management, where you had the manager in the driver's seat and the employee sort of coming along, and you've basically, taken the keys from the manager and I've handed them over to the employee. The employee is now in the driver's seat. The manager is sitting on the other seat, coaching as needed, and there's a whole bunch of peers in the back that are also putting in their 2 cents and helping the employee to go forward. So that's the more radical change, and that's what we'd like to achieve with it. Part of that, of course, is, I think we've all been through that experience of maybe at some point I write my goals and then many, many months later I sort of dust them off, and then there's that day when I sort of have a stomach ache and my manager sort of has a stomach ache, and then we sit down and we talk and it's over and we think, oh, phew, okay, well, I got that over with, and that was it, and then we don't have to deal with this for another year. So not a good thing. And in fact, our what I would say our market-leading performance management process is actually dates from 1976. Of course, it's been technologically supported and innovated along the way, but the basic concept is getting close to 50 years old. And I think we all know that, people are looking for sort of learning opportunities every 4 days. That's not gonna wash. So part of the change is speeding up those feedback loops much, much faster. The basics of how we help performance are very similar as always, in the sense of, there needs to be clarity on what we're doing, and we're calling that now priorities, and there needs to be sort of measurement and feedback and insight, if you will, about how that's going. One thing we want to do is incredibly speed that up between the manager and the employee, and where we're putting the employee in the driver's seat is really that these conversations happen. The point is to have the conversation, not to drive the IT tool or fill out the blanks. And afterwards, the employee actually, it's almost like a self-development blog. The employee actually takes the notes and captures the notes. And the manager can just add comments and say, yeah, don't forget this, or a little more emphasis on that. And the same thing at the year end. And this is where it gets very creepy for a lot of managers and a lot of HR people. There is no such thing as the employee self-assessment and then the manager writes their assessment. There's one thing that they write together. The employee writes it first, the manager will edit it, but there is only one document that they're editing together, and it's the employee that closes it down and documents it at the year end. And that's making a lot of people very nervous, I can tell you. But it really shows that what's it all about? It's all about having giving the employee the accountability and the ability and the empowerment to drive their own performance and their own development. I mentioned the peers, so within the IT tool as well, but within the whole process, there is an opportunity for anybody to give, we call it insight, not feedback. It's a lot less threatening and a lot more helpful to give insight to anybody. And that's enabled by the technology as well. It's not visible to the manager, so it's not anonymous, but it's not visible to anybody except the employee. So it has an enormous potential. Of course, it's all about how we're going to make it happen. And that's what the pilots are for. It has an enormous potential. I think, a lot of you know that one of the hallmarks of a high-performing organization is the ability for peer feedback to sort of self-regulate the organization and shape it. And that's, I think, an incredibly exciting change. So what we're really looking to achieve is to have a much more customer outcome-focused approach to performance, to really focus on the behaviors of discussion and growing the employee, much less than fulfilling a workflow or a tool. So there's a quite free flow tool that enables all this, that's totally mobile enabled. We really want to focus on the impact, so it's not the amount of work, it's rather the new ratings will be about what impact you've provided to the business. And it's about coaching and growing and not, ticking the box. So actually, we've taken away all the HR access. There's no, checking of what's done when. There are no reminders. There's no deadlines, et cetera. So that's our journey, and we're hoping for a massive change. And hopefully, a year from now or so, I can tell you how that's gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan.
Hello, everybody. My name is Suzanne Dolan, in case you forgot, as I'm the third one up. What I'd like to talk to you about today is how do you create a leadership team, an international leadership team, almost from scratch? I was not in the position to have an international leadership team that could take up the mantle of what we were trying to do in various parts of the world. But I did have a growth strategy that required me to have that. So, where did we start? We started in a small country to the west of Europe called Ireland. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. And the part of the business that I'm going to talk to you about is the business we run, which is managing a shared service centre on behalf of an excellent customer of ours. So 7 years ago, my team and I were beautifully running our shared service centre for 3 years, enjoying some excellent client satisfaction surveys. They were very pleased with our service. I had teams in HR, training, operation development, all of these areas that one needs to run a shared service centre. Then we had a very interesting strategy discussion with our business leaders who would like us to grow internationally. They had a very aggressive approach, a very aggressive plan that they had to achieve in a very short period of time. Also, our client had suggested, would we not like to run more of their shared services centres for them in other parts of the world? We, of course, did. But I recognised we probably needed more than just a team of excellent people working in Ireland. So what I needed to look to see the current team that I had, would they be confident and capable of managing elsewhere? Would they be even eager to do so? Would they be happy to be mobile on a consistent, continuous basis? Who was willing to take the risk? And how was I going to create a different leadership dynamic? Because once you take people from one place and put them into another place, you have to make sure the same communication happens, the same level of competency around everything that our client had expected previously would still be delivered. So, what did I do? First of all, I recognized that I had to give the ownership of the strategy of the new business, new country that we were moving to, which was Hungary, where we were to manage a contact centre for our client of 900 seats, mainly in the shared service desk area. Set very clear expectations, as you all know, for leadership. Support them when they fail, because we knew the failure was going to happen eventually, but that would set up strength for the future to make sure we never did it again. But when they were successful, don't over-reward them. Because we found if we over-rewarded, people think, oh, this is fantastic, I'm doing a wonderful job, but actually the successes they were making was the expectations I would expect for the future. But more importantly than that, I had this wonderful team of people who were happy to move, who were happy to travel, but they wouldn't want to travel forever. We were opening up new locations in North Africa, in Tunis, in Amsterdam, and more lately to Poland. So how was I going to ensure that I had a very successful leadership team anywhere in the world, delivering to a set of capabilities that I knew they could do when we were at home in Ireland, but how could I be sure forever that they would run the business as I would want it to be run, even if I wasn't with them? So my team of leaders and I sat down and we created the CPL, Integrated Services Leadership Behaviour Model. Okay, so we all sat down together for quite a number of workshops to figure out what makes what we do successful for our clients. Why do they say, we would like to continue working with you and your team for another 5 years? We would like to work with you opening in other countries. How could we make sure that those values, because you forget what makes you good or makes your client like you after a long time of working with them. You think, oh, that's just the way we are. You forget how to sell yourself. You forget all of those things. Well, we certainly did anyway. So what we came up with was the leadership behaviors that we expect from every single person that works for us. Innovative, inspirational, aware. You've all heard of them. You all go, of course, that's what we expect from our team. Why wouldn't we expect anything else? But how could I be sure that these people that we were either recruiting in other countries would also deliver the same sense of leadership value and behavior that I expected from my team, who in some cases I'd been working with for 18 years, so we knew each other very, very well. So what we did was we implemented an assimilation program for everybody in the organization. So every level of the organization, from first level agent to senior management to myself, we all had a training program, and it's actually in every part of the ethos of our company, these leadership behaviors. And what we've managed to do over the last 6 years is create a business that is matched from Ireland, where it all began, Hungary, Tunisia, Poland, Czech Republic, with a team of people that I can be absolutely sure deliver the same level of leadership behaviors that I expect from myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to start now the discussion and starting with a small comment. I don't know if you will believe it in the audience, but these three presentations weren't prepared to match each other. They just did immediately after we spoken for the first time, and already they were ready. So something happened which was absolutely fantastic, because for me, these whole three presentations have really a common and very, very substantial, something very substantial in common. One of the things which is definitely a thing which is represented in all of these is the word transformation or the word change. And I was preparing myself quite honestly to these presentations today, so I went to the Google thing and I searched for some things, and I found an article in Forbes which was speaking about the top 13 behavior a strong personality avoids. And there were many of them. I will not refer to all of the 13. Some of them were like, the strong person is not avoiding risk if it's controlled, is not avoiding, or is avoiding thinking too much about making others happy, for example. And one of the things is also that a strong person is never fearing change. Looks quite obvious. The next question came into my mind, okay, so does it also apply to enterprises? Are strong enterprises these ones who are not afraid of change? Nowadays, everybody would probably automatically say yes. But I would like to make it more complicated, telling you a very short story which comes from the family. My father is a professor of physics and works from time to time in CERN in Geneva, and has done it for the last 40 years, all the time, once again and again. And he was traveling there sometimes with a plane, sometimes with a car, but staying very often at the same place in Geneva, in an apartment in a house run by an old lady. Last time he was there 30 years ago, he took a train which was going from Geneva to Meran, where the CERN actually is located. It was 6:15 in the morning. And then he usually used the car, so after the other 30 years coming there with the car, he never used the train. And after 30 years, he again came with a train or with a plane to Geneva. And the next morning, he asked the lady, the same old lady, at the breakfast, if the train is maybe still running at 6:15. He said, it was 30 years ago when I lately used it, so it's probably not anymore. And she said, why shouldn't it? It's running since 100 years, it's functioning, why should it change? So that's the Swiss approach. And that's why I'm asking now the question again, is it really that the strong organization has not to fear change, or is it maybe not so simple? I don't know who wants to.
Well, I think it's interesting on that one, because maybe the time didn't change, but I'm sure the train probably did itself. So I would hope that it would have advanced a bit. But I think if you look at any organization, it is right that we are a little afraid of change, because actually if you look at all of the research, 70% of major transformational changes actually fail to deliver the desired results. And the biggest reason for that is we fail to take into account the people element of change. We fail to kind of remember that actually when we're taking people through change, they've got to let go of something else. They've got to go into a period in the middle which might seem a little bit dangerous, and they've got to grab hold of something new. And actually, if we don't be careful, we're not careful to honor the past where they've come from, but also give them a clear sense of where they're going and what that means and help them along that journey, then actually change will fail. So I think it is right that we are cautious, but it's important that we do embrace it in the right way.
What I have found with change, and we are mainly just changing all the time with the growth we've experienced in the last 4 years particularly, is that I generally am very, very happy with change. I like change. I think it's very exciting. It's very interesting. It keeps me motivated. But I have to be mindful, to your point, Sheena, that I need to also have patience because everybody doesn't like change as much as me. So therefore, I have to watch for the signs that let me know when is the right time to move with this person. And you could have 10 leaders, all super amazing people that have all different varying levels of when they accept change to happen. It actually happened today for me with 2 of my staff. They sat down and they went, Suzanne, we feel cleansed now. We feel ready to move to the next stage. But that's taken some time for them to get there. But as long as you're a patient leader, I think change will be very effective.
I would just add to that is that it's also about creating the safe environment. As we heard this morning, it's creating a safe environment to fail in and changing that culture to make sure it's okay. I mean, we're GE, we're all Six Sigma, right? We make aircraft engines and MRIs. There is no room for mistakes, right? So it's this, it's a huge cultural battle with ourselves to say, but we don't make mistakes. I mean, that's how we're bred. So it's really about saying, okay, what is a test? What is a prototype? What's the tolerance for something not to work? Do you pilot a new performance system on a bunch of people even when it's not working 100% well because the learnings from it will bring you to the next level and so on. So,
do we have in the audience some people who want to put some remarks on the change subject or topic or some questions? Okay.
Shimon?
Yes.
On the second level up here. I think the question for you is for you, Ilona. You mentioned you're going through a major change. My question, I suppose, is quite simple. Why? And let me qualify that. Your train has been running for 100 years at 615, running pretty well. What's broken? Why the major? I understand small tweaks, but why such a major change? What was the impetus to bringing that major change at the company?
Yep, thanks for the question. So I think there are, of course, financial metrics as well. One of the things we found was that the complexity of GE also led to a very business unit driven approach. Of course, here we are in the shared service universe, so we understand that why would you have accounting in separate business units in separate countries? That's silly. You should bring it all together because we can do it better. So that was, part of the journey of simplification and quite frankly, financial efficiency. The other is the speed of the technological change. So the proprietary technology that GE has often had as a strength, the life cycle of a gas turbine or an aircraft engine is incredibly long. Those products, though, technologically, now that the proportion of those products is increasingly software and smaller, material science and the other proprietary technology, it becomes a much more, there's a lower entry barrier for competition, et cetera. So there are spaces where we thought we were there in software, in smart hospitals, smart grid, et cetera, where all of a sudden we were finding that actually others could come in extremely quickly and be eating our lunch perhaps by the time we noticed it. So just really the pace of the change of the business environment is really also the impetus. Thanks for the question.
Okay, Agatha.
I think all 3 ladies pointed out that in managing change, what's really important is getting people on board and involved in the change itself. And I think that's especially difficult in the sector we're in, where working with the sector, I often hear people actually feel like they're actually, just the receivers of the change more than a part of it. So any clues or ideas from you on how to make them a part of that change?
Go ahead. Oh.
Well, some of the things that I've done, because I've been working with sort of large-scale organisations and involving them in change, and whether it's working in shared service or outsourcing, or whether it's retail, I think you still have similar challenges sometimes that you've got large numbers of people. But actually, I think there's lots of really simple techniques that you can use. For example, a few weeks ago, I was running an event in Bracknell, which is where we have another shared service centre in the UK, with the manager of the centre, and we just did a really quick and simple kind of World Cafe format, which some of you may know, some of you won't, which is kind of where you have round tables, you ask people questions, they write on the tablecloths, you then move to another mixed groups. And basically, it's a way of problem solving. And I've used it from everything from managing redundancy programs through to managing major changes of how we can improve things, process improvement, developing leadership behaviors. And those kind of high engagement, high involvement techniques, they can be very short and sharp, but they give everyone a voice. But the key thing is that you must make sure you then process that and use that. So using then volunteers to get involved in distilling the information down, feeding it back into working groups. I think that's a way of really engaging and involving people in change. And there's a whole host of methodologies that can be used that often are actually really simple, and technology can help with them if you've got people in multiple locations. But I think it's just trying to think a bit differently about how do you involve and engage people.
Well, we have shared service centres. We've had to implement huge changes. For instance, when we went into the Hungarian office, it was managed by 3 different partners and our client. So they had all those different people involved and getting involved. And it really was a whole work stream called engagement, to Sheena's point. It really was about sitting down with them, literally me sitting down with a town hall, we call them. It's a similar thing, but we call them a town hall, where everyone gets to say whatever they want to say. No idea or no comment is too stupid, but then we have a very industrious team of HR people who take down all these comments and they do actual workshops with them. Now, we don't take them off the calling floor because obviously they have to do their jobs 24 hours a day in our centres. We would have HR clinics, they call them, and they would be open all day, every day for a month. And there'd be 1 or 2 people manning these clinics, and people could come. Some people were afraid to say things openly in the big environments. Some people wanted to say it one-to-one. And we did that change of making them all CPL people, and we lost 2 people out of that. We only lost 2. It really does work engagement. It might seem like it's just all talk, but I've got evidence to know it happened. Does that help?
Yeah, I would just add that I think many of us don't have the luxury of working on processes that are all fixed and perfect, right? So there's always continuous process improvement. And I think, involving the teams or asking for the volunteers or the ideas is definitely one. The other is sort of increasing the quantity of power in the environment about you may not be able to give people autonomy and say on certain things, but there may be other things that you are able to. So, deciding how they're going to work the shifts between the team, for example, or, decorating the office. There's all these managers sitting down and they're choosing the colors and whatever. And I say, why are you doing this? Get a team of employees and have them figure it out and they'll be happy and they'll probably have a lot better ideas than that one manager who wanted to decide it all himself. So I think there's lots of alternative space to give autonomy that we don't think of.
I just thought of something that my HR team would kill me if I didn't say. So we implement quite a few new systems. Like we create the systems and then we have to implement them, which means extra work or a change in process for all of our employees across all of the geographies that we work in. And what we do is we have competitions to name the new technology. And there's a significantly good prize. In their opinion, I might not think an iPad's a good prize, but they do. And we would give a prize for the best ideas, then the name goes into the hat again of whichever idea it was, and then someone is picked. And they're given huge press and huge, identifying them across the entire organization. That sounds like very little. It makes a huge difference because they always say, I made that decision, that was me. Yeah.
In fact, it reminds me of a really simple example where I had to move people from one building to another, and actually there were some things that were non-negotiable, like moving, but I letting the team choose the name of the building and letting them rename it, And then they fell in love with it because it was their building. It was Apollo House. It was their house. It wasn't, number 7, whatever it was, Industrial Boulevard. It actually had a name that they'd given it, and it had a meaning behind it and the imagery that went with it. So it can be really, really simple things. We didn't give a prize, but they still loved it.
Okay, I think we got really a lot of very, very interesting discussions, but you're, of course, still asked if you have still some question or remark. The guy is namely standing already on stage, so
no pressure.
Be quick,
Simon, no pressure.
Be quick, otherwise he will really finish it now. Any questions? No. Okay, Łukasz, thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Honorable panel members, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.